All right, what is up, everybody? We are back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Late night trade news in the NBA. There's a trade made. Anfernee Simons is going from the Portland Trailblazers to the Boston Celtics. Jrue Holiday is going to the Portland Trailblazers. We're going to talk all about this trade here in today's video. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. If you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, liking, turn notifications, do all stuff like that. I really appreciate it. I really upset a lot. I'll link to my Twitter and all that stuff down in the description below. And yeah, don't waste any more of your time. Let's get right into it. So, late night trade news from Shams. Something that kind of came out of nowhere. In terms of didn't know this deal was happening, but it kind of happens. It's maybe not the craziest of names and all that stuff, but still, I think a pretty important trade. From Shams, this is breaking. The Boston Celtics have traded Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trailblazers for Anfernee Simons and 2 second-round picks. Sources tell ESPN. And yeah, so we'll start with, I guess, the Celtics side. For the Celtics, we all knew that some moves are going to be made this offseason to some of their guys. The last 2 years, they've had this great team, won a championship in 2024. Last year, they had an unfortunate end with Tatum getting hurt and losing to the Knicks in the second round very unexpectedly. And with the new second apron and all that stuff and all their guys getting paid, the cards have to be kind of shifted around a little bit. And Jrue Holiday was one of those guys that, with his big contract, with his older age, and didn't have a great end to the season in the Knicks series. That was probably going to be on the move. And now he does go to a very unexpected place with the Portland Trailblazers. For the Celtics, they get back Anfernee Simons. Anfernee Simons, I feel like, has been one of the more underrated players in the NBA because, well, he plays for the Portland Trailblazers, so no one really cares about them anymore. But look at the last 3 years. He's averaged 21, 22, and then last year was 19, a little bit of a drop-off last year. But this is a guy, he's young. He's still only, 25, just turned 26 years old not too long ago. So he's still very, very young. He's on the last year of his contract, which it was kind of expected that he's probably was going to get moved as well. Because we didn't know Portland with their situation, they have a lot of guys on their team, a lot of young guys that they're probably gonna have to pay soon and all that stuff. And they're still trying to figure things out. So Anfernee Simons probably was going to be on the move or something like that. If not this year, then maybe next year in a signing trade and free agency or whatever. But he's still very young. He's very underrated. A guard that you could play with or without the ball, kind of. He's got a very smooth game. He could score it. I mean, we see again the last 3 years he's averaged about 20, 21 points a game over the last 3 seasons. On some pretty good three-point shooter. I mean, last 3 years he shot 40% in 2022 on almost 8 attempts, and then in 2023 he shot 37% on 9 attempts. 2024, 38% on almost 9 attempts, and last year he shot 36% on 8.5 attempts. So this is a guy that is not afraid to shoot those threes, but also is a pretty good shooter. He can shoot the three ball, which I think really can help with. Obviously, we know the Boston Celtics are a team that Missoula ball. It's a 3-pointer. If nothing else, just shoot a three, and he could do that while also being able to be a creator from the guard, which is not something they've really had over this run. They've had guys like Marcus Smart, and Derek White, Jrue Holiday. They've had guards that are good, but not guys that are just like, all right, give them the ball and let them work. They're more of like, connecting pieces, defense, ball handle, hit some shots. Like they haven't really had like Payne Pritchard has been their best kind of like school creator guard, and he only comes off the bench. But now they have another creating guard in Anfernee Simons that I think can really pop big next year in Boston, especially with unfortunately Jason Tatum's probably going to miss a lot of next season. They have some guys that they can kind of. Anfernee Simons is not as good as Jason Tatum. Obviously, Jason Tatum's a top 5, top 10 player in the NBA, but Anfernee Simons can kind of alleviate a lot of pressure off a lot of other guys that they're going to put on. Now guys like Derek White and whoever. Well, we don't even know because apparently from Sean's reporting, the Celtics are still in trade talks and still probably going to try to make moves. So who knows who's going to be on the Celtics team next year. But Anfernee Simons can alleviate a lot of pressure off of those other guys because he's a guy that has been kind of like the number one in Portland over the last few years. So he knows kind of like what the role is. Now he's in a little bit more of a dumbed down role where he doesn't have to be the star player and the carrier of all that because now you have Jaylen Brown. And when Jason Tatum comes back, at some point, he can go down to like being the third option, a very simplified game of just being a guy that can, off the ball, catch and shoot threes, ball handler, and when you need to get in your bag and we need something to work, you got it. So I think this is a great move for the Celtics to get a guy in Anfernee Simons who I think is really underrated. I think really can, especially with all these unfortunate injuries in the Eastern Conference and all that stuff. If he plays well enough, he could be an all-star next year in the East. He could be. Like he's got that type of game, and I think with this team now with an actual, this is the first time he's actually gonna have like a functional team since he's become an actual guy. You know, I obviously played with Dame and CJ, but that's when he was young and coming off the bench and barely playing like 15 minutes a game. Since becoming an actual like guy to score in this league, he hasn't really had like a functional good team around him, and now he finally does. I think that can really um bode well for him next year. For the Trailblazers side of things, this is a very interesting and weird move for them. Um, Anfernee Simons is a really good player. You know, he's been talked about for some teams. You know, like the Magic were a team before the Desmond Bane trade. Some teams are interested in Anfernee Simons. But to take this package for Simons is very confusing a little bit. I think it's gonna be very confusing. Um, you get back Jrue Holiday, who is still a very solid player, but he is 35 years old. Um, he's got 3 years, $90 million left on his contract, and your team is not built to compete at a high level right now. You know, I mean, I love the way the Blazers were honestly one of my like kind of I don't want to say favorite teams, but I really enjoyed what the Blazers were building in Portland. You know, with their young guys, and they had a really good second half of the year. They got a lot closer to the play-in than was expected. You know, they had some big runs in like January and March, and it was like, oh shoot, maybe Portland could be a team in the play-in conversation next season. Um, you bring in Jrue Holiday in a very interesting move where it's not like he's a guy in the last year of his deal and you could just kind of let him go. That's what Boston did with Anfernee Simons. He's still got 3 years left in his deal. By the time this contract is over, he'll be 38. And I don't expect him to be on the Blazers for all of that contract, but still, it's just very, very interesting to trade a young guy in Simons, the guy that's been kind of your team leader for the past few years, for Jrue Holiday, when your team is nowhere near competing seriously in the West. Like they could make a play-in appearance next year, a 10 seed, maybe win 37, 38, something like that games. But Jrue Holiday's not coming in and changing this team. Jrue Holiday's not coming in and being like, all right, we're going from here to here. You know, like Jrue Holiday's just not that type of player anymore. You know, he's on the last couple years of his career. Not even getting any picks back as well. You gave up 2 second-round picks to bring Jrue Holiday in. So the thing I can only think that the Blazers make this move to reroute Jrue Holiday and trade him again. Because I mean they did it once before. Remember they acquired him in the Damian Lillard 14 trade and they flipped him to Boston for Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, and some picks. Maybe they still think that despite him being with this contract and being this old, the name of Jrue Holiday and his resume, a a team that thinks they're right there, one move away, maybe still takes the bite, takes the bait, and be like, you know what, we'll bring in Jrue Holiday still, and maybe they think they can get something decent back for him. Um, but I feel like that has to be kind of the reason you make this trade for Portland, right? You still think the name of Jrue Holiday can get you something? Because if they think he's seriously going to be like a big part of this team next year, which I'm not trying to disrespect. Jrue Holiday's a really good player still. Jrue Holiday's a really solid player for what he does. Defense, be a connecting piece, like can handle the ball, hit some shots. Like I'm not saying Jrue Holiday sucks now. Like I'm not saying that at all. I love Jrue Holiday. But it's just very weird and confusing for the Blazers to make this move. Like sending away Anfernee Simons for just Jrue Holiday, not even any picks, no young players attached to it, just Jrue Holiday. Like it feels like that it has to be kind of like we're gonna bring him in now, and then in another month or whatever when free agency starts, we're gonna flip him again for something. And if they do that and they get something decent for him, then hey, maybe they're thinking 3 steps ahead. Good. But if they made this move thinking that Jrue Holiday is going to be a big difference and is going to be the difference in bringing this team from being near the bottom of the West to a playoff team, I don't know about that. I don't know if Jrue Holiday is moving the needle that much, especially in a Western Conference that is loaded and packed. We just saw Kevin Durant's going to be a rocket now. There's still some other things that could go down and happen. Like we don't know how it's going to look next year. Just a very confusing move for the Blazers. Very, very interesting. Very confusing. We just gotta wait and see, I guess, how this plays out in the end. But for Boston, I really like this move. You get rid of Joe Holiday's contract. You bring in a really good player in Anfernee Simons. I think can really pop and can really help your team next season. And Yeah, let me know down in the comment section below how you feel about this trade for both sides, all players, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's gonna be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, liking, turn on notifications, doing all stuff like that. I'd really appreciate it. It really helps out a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow.